Okay, so this skills test, Module 4 skills test, has to do with polarity. And before you do anything, I encourage you to check out sections 18.7 and 18.8 of your textbook. If you haven't read those yet, read them before you do this activity, because they define some terms that you're going to really need to understand, such as polarity, non-polarity, a polar molecule versus a non-polar molecule, dipoles. And then you're going to get into what are called ion dipole, dipole-dipole, and dipole-induced dipole. So there's a lot of jargon here. It's really not that complex, but you need to read through it. Now, question 1 has to do with determining whether these different molecules are polar or non-polar. I encourage you, this is something you can actually, look at these molecular structures and in some cases easily determine whether they're polar or non-polar. But you may want to also check yourself. There's nothing wrong with doing a little Google search and finding out the molecular geometry of some of these molecules and to help you understand. So before you make your ultimate decision on the polarity or non-polarity, there's nothing wrong with doing a little searching. Now, the second part of this activity has to do with determining the relative strength of different types of interactions. So, for example, two nonpolar molecules. This little simulation allows you to essentially see how hard it is to separate those two nonpolar molecules, and then compare that to, let's say, two polar molecules, and see whether or not there's a difference in the amount of energy that would have to be applied to cause those molecules to separate. So that little simulation will help you get a feel for the strength, the relative strength of these different interactions. And then there's a couple of questions that will then ask you to apply your knowledge about those relative strengths to answer, for example, what kind of a molecular attraction is going on in different situations. A needle floating on water, a soft drink having fizz. If you're not clear on that, read section 18.8. Like I said, that's a very important section. It'll enlighten you and actually give you some of these examples. Questions 3 and 4 have to do with the amount of polarity, least polar to most polar, and then how that polarity affects the boiling point of different bonds. So in this case, this is a carbon and hydrogen bond, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, hydrogen. For question 4, it has to do with different compounds, fluorine, F2, or hydrogen fluoride or hydrogen chloride. Which of those molecules would have lowest boiling point, which one would have the highest boiling point, rank them accordingly.